Hi everyone, welcome to Frequency Bone Summer Music Connection 10, The Art of the Student, Video 8. Oh my. I think we're still going to be talking about influences. What a giant topic. Now, let's start on a certain level because there's been so much for people to think about. If you can stomach it, or if you're interested, about what was said in the other two videos, 6 and 7. Got really into the deep end on making our way into root causes rather than certain things that just might be symptoms. You know, someone says, oh, well, my nose is running or my lungs aren't working well, and someone can say, well, you know, maybe you have an allergy. Okay? So you can go a long time thinking you have different kinds of allergies. Of course, you can get tested for allergies. So all these kinds of techniques to test someone, some of them are very useful. Okay? So some of the root causes of why someone's nose might be clogged is they haven't figured out what's actually causing it. Might not just be hay fever or dust as the only things. Might be dairy, might be soy, might be gluten. And then the question comes in, I can't give up those things. I love those. So what does this have to do with what we're talking about with the art of the student in relationship to influences? Well, actually, there's a correlation. And that correlation is finding the root causes of why people, for example, like we're talking about in this video, feel a need to sound like other people. Is it better to sound like other people? Is there a reason to sound like other people? Is that where art wants us to lead? And very clearly from video 7, that would point to no, not at the actual level of art, but perhaps on the level of certain kinds of employment. Where I remember when I auditioned for the Los Angeles Philharmonic for principal trombone when Ralph Sauer got the job. This was my second audition I ever took, and I did very well. People were very impressed, except they said, you know what? You sound too much like a bass trombone. Now that was in 1974. The spring of 1974. I was kind of getting out of being a freshman at New England Conservatory of Music. But I was playing on probably not even that great of a Bach 42B, which I had just gotten a few months ago, and a standard, at that time, standard Bach 5G mouthpiece. And people thought I sounded like a bass trombone. Nowadays, that wouldn't be the case. They wouldn't have thought that sounded like a bass trombone, I'm sure, compared to all the people that are playing much bigger equipment. Okay, the technology has changed a bit, so some people are playing with much bigger lead pipes, mouthpieces that would really have been considered bass trombone mouthpieces in some ways back then, and bass trombone slides, bass trombone crooks. And so we can see that through time, our feelings of sound change, and with that feeling of change or the need to change, whatever is actually causing that, then a person will go on a search for the technology, the equipment, that will be able to support that particular need desire, want to create a certain type of sound. Someone might love playing euphonium so much and they want to have a trombone that has an element of euphonium. A tenor trombone. Want to have a tenor trombone that has that element of the bass trombone in it. And people, I think, a lot of times are playing alto that sounds pretty close to tenor. Was that the reason? Is it supposed to do that? If everyone thinks it does, then yes, it does. But there are distinctions that need to be made in the different equipment. Now, what I mean by that is, I think a bass trombone should have a bassier sound than a tenor trombone. A tenor trombone should have a bigger, tenorier sound than an alto trombone, and so on and so forth. But then again, there's what is driving a person to have a particular sound. And you know what? That's valid. That's terrific. Here's the issue. Remember, all of this was started with an email I got from a man named Curtis, who's a doctorate student. And he was caught by this interview, and people were talking about why trombonists are sounding more and more the same in different countries, and the individual styles of the countries don't seem to be as clearly defined as they used to be. And they were saying, well, this is because the advances of trombones, that technology, and I think there was a hint of maybe the pedagogy getting more uniform throughout the world. And I said a lot about this on video 7 and 6, got into a great detail about why different sounds appear throughout the world. And they shouldn't, how can they be the same? Okay, so let's leave that there for now. Where was I going with this? It's such a great, huge topic. It really, really is. So if someone thinks the tenor trombone should have a really more bassy sound, which I was probably, in one way, some of the ones way back then was starting some of that trend. And Ron Barron, and then others were getting it in kind of a different way, but still it started to get bigger and bigger, and the equipment got bigger and bigger. Ron and I weren't using necessarily bigger and bigger equipment to get it. We were doing things with our body to get it. And which is more of the first overlay, physiology of a human being trying to get different sounds. But if that's not going to be satisfying enough, sure, you're going to go to, well, maybe the equipment I'm playing on doesn't match my physiology, and my physiology is, in essence, being governed by what I hear and feel in my mind. It's mind, body, and then a piece of equipment that will support that combination and need. So all of that's great. But what happens then, very influential players say, they do it and everyone thinks, that's the new sound. Well, yes, according to that particular time period which we're in now. Like I said, 1974, they thought I sounded like a bass trombone for principal trombone of Los Angeles Philharmonic. And now that wouldn't be considered that way at all. So things change. And then that started to go global, and social media and everything, and it's just recordings of so many different kinds. You know, turn on the computer and you can hear who knows how many players playing. One thing I'm noticing, just to go on this similarity, is the articulations are sounding more and more similar. One of the things, if you go back in time, I see, on one of the videos I was saying, how impressed I was with going back and listening to these great swing bands. The brass players were great, and the jazz players. You know, Louis Armstrong didn't have access to him on that trumpet. Would he have been better? My view says no. Why would that have been a better tone if he was playing a Monet trumpet or any other kind of trumpet or a Yamaha or whatever? Why would it have been better? Maybe it wouldn't have captured him. That essence that needed to come out at that time and use that equipment to do it. It fit. It worked. You see what I'm trying to say? So things change over time. And do we go with that flow? Do we feel we have to go with that flow? Is it actually improvement? Is it actually creating deeper art? I do not think so. I think it's creating more professional stability, frankly. And in the age of technology, what do we want? We want things that are consistent, more dependable, another way of saying it. So when you're on your gig, or even when you're playing by yourself, you don't want to have to go through certain struggles maybe you would have with other equipment just to get it more focused or more even throughout the ranges, when the instrument itself will do it. Maybe we're trying to, in the midst of all this, trying to get the Stradivarius of trombones. So no matter who picks it up and plays, they'll have a great sound. It won't be their sound, it'll be the trombone's sound. That particular trombone will be so great that someone could pick it up and go, it'll sound almost just like anyone playing it. Isn't that an interesting thought? Now, probably not that far, but do we want it to be like the instrument's so good that just like someone going up to a piano, and they're not even a piano player, could touch a key, and you'll hear that Steinway sound in a certain kind of way, as opposed to maybe other pianos. Is that what we're going for? That's an interesting thought. Or is this whole thing a matter of a few people advancing the equipment? I say advancing like this, advancing the equipment because their playing's changing. And they couldn't do exactly what they could do before on the previous equipment. So they have access to an instrument company or instrument companies, different players I'm talking about, and they keep tweaking it and tweaking it to fit their current physiology. Which a smart player will do. They'll say, you know what, I can't play this equipment anymore. I got to find something else. Now that used to be a little more difficult, I think, years ago, but people were doing it. People were doing it. Mixing up this equipment with a little bit of that one and having, going down to the basement and, drilling out the mouthpiece and all this kind of thing. So people will strive to find what's going to eventually continue to work for them if other things aren't working very well. So that's smart. Who's knocking that? My point is, if we can get to the core of it again, from Curtis's email, he was saying, can a person have great technique and still sound unique? This gets to the point of, what is great technique? And people look at me like, oh, come on, dude, don't play games with us. Everyone knows what great technique is. I'm just opening up the subject. What is great technique? What is it? Accuracy, evenness, consistency in sound throughout the registers, flexibility, control over dynamic contrasts, being able to do it really, really on a regular basis, not having many off days. What's great technique? Dependability. I could say yes to all those things. Is it the only variable and deciding factor of what great technique is? What about technique that best serves the spirit or essence of the music? You know, sometimes I play on 3 different trombones: Conn, Shires, and my Monette. And I pick it up, or different mouthpieces I'll play with. Go, oh, this one has this quality. Oh, this one has this quality. Oh, this one has this quality. All different qualities. Think, why can't this one have that, but the attack of this one, the body of sound of this one, but the ending of the note of that one? So we're looking for something that can basically do all what we want to do, right? Eventually, it's going to come down to what the player can do. I notice that if you're going to look at vibrato, a body and timbre of sound, and articulation, that at one time those were very, very, very different in different countries. Very different. I just don't believe that the equipment was, that much worse necessarily. Okay, in certain ways, yes, but in other ways, no. In other ways, like I was talking about, that nature of the land and that culture and that ethnicity and that environment would create a certain vibrato, would create a certain articulation. Russian and English, French, German, and Spanish, in Chinese, for example, are very different languages. They have very, very different timbres and dictions and intonations and inflections. Wouldn't that naturally come through the instrument? Are we trying to take certain concepts that maybe developed in the West and just kind of infiltrate the world sometimes with it? I mean, I went to Japan for the first time in the 70s. There was a McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Shakey's Pizza. 50 years before that, I'm not so sure that was the case. So what's happening in this, everyone sounding more similar, has been happening for a long time in so many different ways. Not only in the arts, but in the clothing, in the way people dress, and automobiles. Everything's just mixed all over the place. Maybe in the end, there'll be a totally different race. There'll be a combination of all the races coming together. That's fascinating. So is this whole talk about everyone being the same a good thing? I would like to think that it goes beyond anything exterior. An exterior, even body or genetics. I'd like to think that no matter what machine, meaning body, we find ourselves into, or what particular equipment we happen to be playing, the distinguishing factor is going to be the uniqueness of each human being. And maybe then we'll start to realize, that person needs very different equipment. And it's not a little bit, I mean different, to be able to sound like them. So this kind of world standard of what is a sound, I think that eventually, for the broader art, that's going to need to go by the wayside. To make room for the infinite multiplicity that's not only on this planet, but in the universe. Now you can say, well, what a far out sci-fi idea, but I want to make money. I want to get a job in an orchestra. So do that. Do what you think you need to do that. If you can do that without sacrificing your personal art, great. If you don't care about sacrificing your personal art, great. Well, I don't know about great, okay? I didn't really 100% mean that. I'm just saying that as that's your decision. If you want to be part of the club, whatever that club is, I have an idea of what it is. That's up to you. If you're feeling that you have a need to express something different, be brave to be. It's your life. You don't have to sound like everyone else. You do not have to play everyone else's equipment. And to try to be like someone else, like I quoted the Bhagavad Gita, that'll bring danger. It'll bring danger because you won't be you. And you were designed to be you. And I'm talking about in a very big sense, you know, not just the world's my oyster and I'll do everything I want to do just because I'm me. I'm saying it in much less egotistical terms than that. But trying to go into the uniqueness of each individual art. So again, what is technique? Technique is to facilitate the deeper parts of us that need to be expressed. That the causes of everything, the cause of everything, created diversity, obviously, for a reason. Because one thing or life expresses itself through absolute infinite diversity, which is the signature of originality.